And we're live. Welcome to the Elevating IT podcast. Let's see. Give it a few moments here for folks to join in. Make sure my mic is on. All right. So welcome to the broadcast today. So here's the deal. I was going to be joined by a guest, special guest, and the special guest just emailed me and told me they had a family emergency. So we're not going to be joined by a guest today. But what I am going to do instead is go over something that I was going to go over with you in the first place. So it actually works out in a weird way. Interestingly, I was originally going to talk about the prospecting mistakes people make when prospecting, and that's what we're going to cover today. So I'm going back to covering the content that I was going to talk about in the first place. And unfortunately, my guest did have to cancel because of a family emergency. So I don't even want to tell you who the guest was. It was going to be a surprise guest, but I don't want to put them on the spot by telling you the big reveal of who that person was, and then makes them look bad. And hopefully it's not a major family emergency. So hey, welcome. It's Friday, and this is the weekly sales wrap that we always do live. Many times I'm joined here by the founder of Audit, Frank DiBenedetto. He is off today. And again, I was going to be joined by an awesome guest who was an MSP, is not an MSP anymore, works for another company. And I don't want to give it away because I don't want to make them feel bad for not being able to be here. But that person couldn't make it today. So in a moment, I'm going to kind of go into mistakes that people make when prospecting, or when preparing to prospect, because there's a lot to it. It can be very, very easy, but it's a bunch of stuff. And what I would ask you to do is pop in your questions in the comments. If you have specific questions, I got some great questions already that are actually going to be incorporated into the training that we're doing on this next week. And I'm going to pop that into the comments so that everybody has that. So I'm chatting that at you guys now. There we go. I don't know if that's going to post over to link, comment in there after, just in case. Actually, I think I can go over to the LinkedIn post while I'm doing this. So this is going to be interesting. Make sure I don't inception myself, and you'll be able to get that too. So, and that link, by the way, is for a webinar that I'm hosting for Audit next week. It's a free webinar, whether you're a user of Audit or not. Feel free to jump on it. It is part one of a multi-part webinar series on prospecting. It's going to be about 2 to 3. Right now, it's breaking down to 2 to 3 parts. What I'm looking to do actually is make these a little shorter. I don't want to go a full hour with them. I'm looking at 30 minutes of content for each, and then leaving room for a good amount of questions and answers, because I've been getting a flood of questions on prospecting. It's something that, again, can be very difficult. It doesn't have to be. I think people overcomplicate it. I think we all naturally do. And I would love to hear your thoughts and your questions, or if you're killing it with prospecting, pop in a comment there and leave your advice, your 2 cents on what's working for you. So I'm going to, what I'm going to do right now is kind of go through this list of prospecting mistakes that people make. And it's really important, I think, to talk about this kind of stuff so you understand what it's all about. Because like with anything, you have to have a recipe to follow. You have to have a system, even if it's simple. It doesn't have to be something complex, but understanding what kind of goes into it and what you should and shouldn't be doing is super important. So, and before I get into this, again, just for people who are joining into the live, I promised that I sent an email out to our list before, promising that I was going to be joined by a guest, very special guest, and he couldn't make it. He had a little family emergency, and I only found out about 10 minutes ago. So again, slipping back into what I was going to cover in the first place. So prospecting mistakes, and feel free to join in the conversation here, make a comment, leave a comment, and let me know what you're thinking. First thing is, most important thing above everything else, number one mistake is not knowing your own value. what you bring to the table. And that's a big problem for a couple of reasons. And it may not seem like, I think everybody knows their value, but sometimes we don't know our value. Like we know it, but we don't know it. Or we get in our own way where we start to forget that we even bring value. You start to go out there and you're doing this sales thing, and it becomes very, very much about numbers, right? It's like, this is how I earn my money. And it becomes a little more about it can become a little bit more about the dollars. And you really have to understand the value that you bring. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're just doing this, for work, and it starts to feel like work. It doesn't feel fun. And there's a lot of things that people don't like about prospecting. So you really need to feel like you're doing something for a reason. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. It's that horrible feeling of that, all those things that get in our way with prospecting start to creep in. So understanding your value, knowing what value you bring to the marketplace, I think is one of the most important exercises you can go through. And I'm here to tell you that MSPs, which is primarily our audience, managed service providers, bring a tremendous amount of value. And, I think a lot of times we get caught up in what it is we do on a daily basis, right? The work we're doing. We get caught up in the minutia of work and all of the hard things that we do at work and all of the things that are negative and complaints and dealing with bad things. I mean, we all have that. It's work. That's why they call it work. So it's really easy to forget about the great things that you do as a business. So whether you're an MSP or not, you should think about that. What is it that you provide? What value do you provide? And I can tell you as an MSP, if your customers aren't using you and they don't have the right solutions, like if you're not protecting them, their business may stop, right? Like if somebody gets malware, or the system goes down, or they get hacked, or any number of bad things that can happen, even simple things like just, computers, lights go off and they can't log into their computer. What do? You're there to make sure that their business keeps going. And not knowing your value, not really understanding that and thinking about that deeply is not only going to make it harder for you to bring that positive mindset that I think we need with prospecting, but it's also going to be hard for you to sell what it is you do if you don't understand the value that you're selling. So, and that's what this is about at the end of the day. Anytime that I teach sales, I was talking to another one of our users who's going to come on to a webinar. Actually, he's an MSP, and he's going to come on to a webinar in a couple of weeks to share what he's doing in his business. He's killing it. He's growing like crazy. He's doing such a great job. And he was telling me, he hates the idea of making it about money. He doesn't want to come on and just talk about sales and how he sells, because he said, I want to talk about the value that I provide. And that's really so super important, right? The value that you provide is what you're selling. You're selling something that is helping people, that is helping them grow their business, helping them keep money flowing into their bank accounts. I mean, that is a huge value. So number 2, and this is in no particular number count here, but not feeding your mind. Prospecting is not easy, right? And I think you have to be a little crazy to love prospecting. I don't trust anybody who tells me they love prospecting. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've done prospecting in many, many different ways, from picking up the phone and smiling and dialing, dialing for dollars, we used to call it, to networking, to anywhere in between. And nobody likes it. Nobody looks forward to coming in and going, I can't wait to pick up the phone and cold call somebody. Or I can't wait to send a bunch of cold emails and have people tell me never contact them again. There's nobody on this earth loves that, or maybe even likes it, but we do it, and we know we have to do it. There's ways to enjoy it a little, and take away some of that pain. And we'll cover that in the training next week. But at the end of the day, if you're not feeding your mind, and that is, maybe listening, doing something that relaxes you, right? Like here's what I do every day. I read for 30 minutes at the start of my day. And I know if my day is going to start at 7 a.m., I'm up at 6 a.m. to read because that's really important. It sets the tone for my day. I listen to a podcast or a book on tape when I go for my daily walk. And I do that. I go for a walk at least 30 minutes every day. That's part of my mindset building activity that keeps me in a, running on all cylinders, right? You have to have something like that. And it can be whatever it is for you. It can be listening to your favorite music at the beginning of the day, just getting yourself pumped and jacked for the day. Skill building, right? Emptying your cup, realizing that you've got something you can learn. Hopefully you're registered for the webinar coming up next week, where we're going to deep dive into prospecting. And I'm going to go over all sorts of good stuff in there. And ideally, anybody who comes to that training is going to walk away with a system that they can implement. And it's not a one size fits all thing. It's for MSPs. So if you're not an MSP, it may not be for you, but it is not necessarily about cold calling or social selling. It's going to cover a bunch of different things, but really learning, skill building. These are important things. Next one, not knowing who your ideal customer is. Selling to the wrong customer is the surest path to killing yourself. So hopefully you know your ideal customer. Not knowing the value of your ideal customer, not knowing the value you bring to them. You need to understand what the value to your business is of an ideal customer. And we all want to serve, but the truth is that our business, your business, my business is not right for every customer. And you have to know who those customers are and not spend your time chasing them. So we don't want to go into the pond fishing with a giant net and pulling up, thousands of pounds of fish, for lack of a better term, right? We want to get the big fish. We want to get the ideal customer. So not knowing who your ideal customer is, not knowing the value of your ideal customers are killers. Not focusing on value, talking about features instead. Hey, calling somebody up or sending an email. Hey, would you like to see my widget? Would you like a new screwdriver? It screws in stuff. That's not what we want to focus on. We need to focus on the value to them. And that's where the big bucks are in selling anything. That's where you get paid the right amount of money, when you are focusing and selling incredible value. And it's it's almost like a circle, like the circle of value, the circle of life. Like if you are selling the lowest priced thing, right? If you're the low guy in your neighborhood, and you're always competing on price, and you're selling the lowest service, you're bringing on customers, but you're not able to make enough money to afford to hire another tech or build the business the way you need to, or hire a marketing person. So you're constantly working harder than you should. And you're not providing the right value because you might have to be cutting costs on vendors, and you're not bringing the right services. So you're not providing the right stuff. You're not growing your MSP, and it's that circle. When you price right, and when you are talking about these things, like, you're selling the right things, the right solutions to the right people, you're able to charge the right price, right? When you're talking benefits, you're selling the value, you're able to charge a higher price when you do that. And when you charge a higher price, you can hire more people, you can run more effective business, you can have more of your time back because you're not spending all that time chasing those dollars. So let's see where I am on my list. And please jump in and ask questions in the chat. Not the chat, but the comments here. I can't see them on LinkedIn. So if you're commenting on LinkedIn, may or may not be able to see those. Let me see where we are. We talked about not focusing on values, focusing on features, not focusing on solving problems, pains, and building their business, right? Like, you want to focus on the problems that they're having, the pains that they're having, and how that translates into building their business. That is a huge mistake, not focusing on solving problems. People are buying solutions from you. They're not buying features. They're not even buying benefits. They're buying solutions to their problems, right? So not researching your leads or preparing, right? One of the worst things you can do is go in blind. And I've done that. And it's so embarrassing when somebody calls you out on it and they can tell that you haven't researched them. What you sell, MSPs, is a very high value service. It's a high touch service. You're going to have to go in really prepared, more so than somebody selling something that's not as expensive and not as valuable. So research your leads and prepare for your meetings. It doesn't have to be a ton of time, but you have to spend some time doing that. Absolutely. Next one is not speaking to that person in that language. And what I mean by that is you're trying to talk to everybody. And when you're talking to everybody, you talk to nobody. So this goes along with the last one of researching your leads and preparing for things. You want to speak to them as much as you can to them, to that individual person, right? Everyone likes the kind of spray and pray approach, and there's a time for that. But if you want to cut through the noise, you have to be different than everyone else. Use your research when reaching out, but also on the other side, don't act like this guy who I just got an email from. I'm going to read this to you because this is a great example of somebody who did a little bit of research and did it and then used it wrong. They reached out to me on LinkedIn, and let me read this. I came across your profile on LinkedIn and was wondering if you are responsible for the recruitment talent acquisition efforts. I'm not going to be too specific. I'm an engineering grad in addition to being a recruiter with about a decade of experience. I've helped place over 300 professionals across multiple industrial, including software engineering, engineering management, design, sales, product management, and executive administration. I have experience providing, this is the wrong one. This is the wrong example. This is a bad one too. I should continue reading this because it just goes on. This person mentions nothing about me. I'm going to have to see if I can find the one I'm thinking of here. I'll kind of give you, I can't find it right now, but I'm going to give you the cliff notes of it because it was great. The person reached out and said that they noticed I went to Western Connecticut State University, and they are specifically reaching out to WCSU alums to offer them their software. This person I took one look at the person and I could see the person's out in California, and just for giggles, I normally would ignore it because they mentioned nothing else about me. It was like literally they just looked at my profile and maybe then searched on people who went to the same college and then reached out to them with the same blanket email. And they basically, they had no connection to the school. So, and they didn't even mention the connection. You didn't say, I went to WestCon too. So when you are, when you are out there researching people, and hopefully you're doing that, you're researching your leads and prospecting and preparing and using that when you speak to them, but you have to make it real. That's what I'm getting at. And there's a finesse to that, right? And just think about it from a point of view of you as a person, right? Would you ever go up to a person and go, "Hey man, I noticed you like fishing. And you don't like fishing. You've never been fishing in your life." And the person goes, "Yeah, do you like fishing?" You're like, "Oh, no, not really. I just noticed you like fishing." It's ridiculous, right? If there's a reason to mention something or drop something, if you're excited about something you see about them that you learned, use it. But if you're not, don't. It's going to be fake. So do the research, talk to them like that person, but don't fake it. These aren't numbered. Next point is not setting and measuring and analyzing and reviewing goals. And this is something that I'm sure you've heard this before, right? The goals we set, the goals we get, blah, blah, blah. But it's true. You really need to have some kind of, before you go out and you start doing prospecting and selling, you really have to have some way to kind of say, here's what I want to achieve, and here's what I achieved. And did I achieve what I thought I should? And then adjust the goals. And it doesn't have to be something complex. You don't have to go out and find any kind of tools. You can just use a simple spreadsheet. And I'm going to actually give you some resources on next week's webinar, by the way. So when you come to the webinar, we talk about goals. I'm going to give you my little goal setting spreadsheet. Real simple. It's just, how many calls did I make? How many activities did I do? How many of those turned into something? And how many of those went to the next step? And then looking at that and going, okay, I didn't quite hit my goal. I wonder what I have to do. And the cool thing about keeping those goals is not after not too much time, you have the ability to go and do some simple mathematics and come up with a conversion rate. And you can then improve that conversion rate. You can apply the conversion rate to goals. It's really not that complex. You don't have to be a data wizard to do it, but it just starts with making sure you're at least setting little goals. Next one is not being a good communicator. Not being a good communicator. And what I mean by that is you need to be able to communicate somewhat effectively. You don't need to be great. You don't need to be a Shakespearean writer to write emails or write blogs. You don't need to be, George Clooney to talk to somebody on the phone. You just need to be good, right? And crafting good emails and good openings to say it to a call or however you're going to communicate, crafting those messages and thinking about them is something that is worth practicing. And I'm not talking about going nuts here. I'm talking about, write out what you're going to say or record yourself saying what you think you're going to say and then listen to it and say it for other people, right? See what their opinions are. So analyzing, really what it comes down to is practicing it and analyzing it and not being afraid to ask for people's opinions on it. You'll get better. Next point, not building your professional and personal brand. This is brand building, what I'm doing. It's either helping me or hurting me, but who cares? I don't care. I promise you that getting in front of a camera, on LinkedIn, talking, making videos, making posts, it doesn't have to be video. It can be audio, podcast, can be written, but you have to be doing something here on social media, on your website to make these things come alive, because people do, number one, people do take more steps to understand who you are and what you're all about. Number two, it helps you make some noise. It will help you get better at communicating. I promise you that turning on a camera and talking in a camera will help you become a better communicator. Again, I know I'm not going to win any awards for my speaking ability and my being on camera here, but I'm getting better at it every time I do it. And don't be afraid to do it. Just talk like you're talking to a person in a normal conversation. Or if you're afraid to get on camera, just write. But that's the key, right? Like if you start reaching out to people on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn can be an incredibly powerful resource for you as a B2B business, an MSP reaching out, your customers are probably going to be on LinkedIn or other social channels. If you're reaching out to them through social media, through email, they're going to go look, especially on social media, they're going to go look at what else you did. And if you don't have stuff, you're really missing an opportunity. So there's a bunch of reasons to do this. With prospecting, I think it's just really, really important. If you are hitting people up on LinkedIn and you have no content on LinkedIn and you have no ability for them to see who you are and get a feel for you, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. And the name of the game is always trying to kind of optimize things and be a little bit better than everybody else that's doing stuff. The cool thing with prospecting is that most people do it so bad that you will stand out by doing it even a little better than bad. That sounds weird, but it's so true. How many terrible emails or spam emails do you get, or messages on social media that you're like, this was just a canned thing, and it's you see that all day, every day, right? Like you get those, and you're like, this is awful. You can step it up, right? But it starts with building that personal brand. Next one is not networking. You don't have to do any specific thing. I'm not going to talk about any specific groups, but networking. It's the secret to success, and it's the easiest way to get started in prospecting. If you don't have any money, or you're just starting out, or you're small, networking is really foundational. Next one, we're almost done here. Not being consistent. You can't do prospecting this week and not do it next week. You have to do it every week. You have to do it every day, or at least on a schedule. And the next one kind of springboards off this, but not being persistent. People give up too soon. They give up on the system of prospecting. So they prospect for a couple weeks or a month or so, and then they stop. And not being persistent with the people you're prospecting. You got to learn to take no, not take no for an answer. I hope I got that right. Basically, you keep going until they tell you, listen, man, if you call me again, I'm going to call the police. I mean, not that far, but you understand what I mean. You know, if somebody says they're not interested, you don't go, oh, okay, no problem. I won't, I'll take you off my list. It's, well, you know, maybe you find out if maybe they'll be interested next year. Well, like, why aren't they interested now? So you use that and continue. You've got to be persistent. Next one is not being prepared for objections. And this is the stuff you do in your learning time, writing these out, kind of exploring what people may say, taking things that they've said that inserted in objections and writing them out so that you understand them. The best thing you can do is get a feel for what the objections are going to be and solve them before they become an objection. Next one, not crafting a sales process that can be repeated. So if you're out there prospecting and you don't have a good process, even if you're the one doing it, even if you're a one-man show, you're doing it yourself, create your process, because if you're consistent and you're doing it, you're providing high value, charging the right prices, you're going to be more than a one-man show before long. And you need to be able to show people how to do this. You need to become from a salesperson to a sales manager. That's where you really, really grow. And the only way you can do that is by creating your sales process. Next one, we're on the three last ones here. Not keeping it simple. Everyone makes it so complex and complicated. And I'm talking about simple in two ways. First of all, your messaging needs to be simple and understandable to the person who you're prospecting. Number two is you need to make sure you are making your process simple. The more complicated you make it for yourself, the harder it's going to be. Prospecting can be simple. Like if you're doing calling, calling can be as simple as just picking up the phone and saying, hey, Joe, I was calling you because I see that you own a doctor's office in town. Looks like you guys just opened up. I own an IT company and I love networking with folks. Would you be open to getting a cup of coffee? I mean, it doesn't have to be that complicated. It doesn't have to be scripted. It can be very natural. Second to last one, not getting over the hatred and fear of prospecting. Tough love is you just got to get over it. Like I said in the beginning, if you were on this chat in the beginning when I started here, nobody likes prospecting. Nobody. Not even the best prospectors in the world. Anybody who stands up and goes, I cannot wait to get in the office and pick up the phone and cold call people is crazy or lying. Nobody loves it, no matter how good they are at it. They do it because they know they have to. And it's like anything else, right? We know we have to do things that are good for us, and we get over it, and we do it because we're an adult, right? And that's what you have to do. Unfortunately, we all do stuff we don't want to do, and you gotta get over it. That goes back to the beginning when I was talking about the mindset stuff, really getting a positive attitude and training yourself and practicing, and you make it easier, right? As you build this process, you make it easier so it's less painful as you're doing it, but you've got to really just go, you know what? I'm going to pull off the Band-Aid. I'm going to do it. And the last one, not getting started because they're waiting for something to be perfect. This is the killer. When people start prospecting, they spend all their time preparing and way less time doing. And if you talk to any good sales manager, they're going to tell you that's exactly what happens. The person spends hours and hours and hours preparing, right? They come in for maybe they block off their time for prospecting and they spend 3/4 of the time blocked off preparing. And then they go, oh, I've got time for 2 or 3 calls, and then they're done. When they should have done the opposite, right? You do a little preparation beforehand, and then you get going. You get rocking and rolling. The best of the best do that. So that's my big list of mistakes that people make when prospecting. And there's probably more. I come up with more. I add more. It started as a list of 5 things. The list has grown. So hopefully you enjoyed that and got something out of it. I would urge you to come to our prospecting training next week. It is Thursday, June 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will be recorded. Anybody who's signed up for the webinar will get a recording, but I would urge you to be on it because we're going to leave a lot of time for Q&A. This is going to be this is really going to be a great training. I put a lot of work into this training, and it's based on many, many years of experience and really deep dive into the MSP world, understanding how the MSP world works. So this is really custom tailored for MSPs. So with that said, I will sign off for today. Thanks for tuning in. Be back at you next week, same time, same channel. And I do apologize for my guest. My guest was, hopefully I will reschedule. I don't want to tell you who he is because I don't want to embarrass him or put him on the spot, but I had a great guest for you today who is just a master at prospecting. Somebody who's been a prospector at an MSP, who been a sales manager at an MSP, and just amazing. But he had a family emergency, so about 15 minutes prior to the show, he emailed me and said he couldn't make it. So my apologies to you guys, and he said he was sorry for not being able to be here. But thank you guys for sticking with me, and until next week, keep on elevating IT.